All right, for this month, our book is Why Has Nobody Told Me This? And I will say this book really changed my perspective on how I look at my emotions and how those play a role. Now, I know that there are a lot of different books out there that talk about this topic, but I think this book by Dr. Julie Smith really shined a light on emotions in a way that I hadn't really thought about it before. And I think that there is a huge business lesson, especially for us, because it really ties into something that we do. And I really encourage people to really allow themselves to see this perspective. Now, I will say we're in the middle of kind of what I call vacation season, kind of that May, June, July time frame for people. And hence, I'm wearing one of my vacation shirts because this helps me relax. And I bring that up because I would say as you're going on vacation, I think vacation is a great time to whether it's to pop in an audiobook or to grab a physical book if you want to do that, or grab a magazine, something that you want to read to really allow you to do, some thinking or something that will be a little more thought provoking for you. I think it is a great time for you to explore that and a great time for you to do that. Now, here's my honest opinion on the book. So, the book, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? My first thought was the book does move a little slow in the beginning. Like if you're listening to audio, it's about 6 hours. So for me personally, I sped the book up on audio to about two and a half to sometimes I sped it up to 3x because I thought, the narrator read a little slower for my personal preference. So, when you speed it up that much, you take a 6 hour book down to somewhere between 2 to 3 hours long, which means you can get through the book a lot faster. And I don't necessarily feel like you'll miss anything if you speed it up that much. I still think you'll be able to get the value from the book. And I tend to listen to books in stages, meaning like I'll listen to it for maybe 30 to 40 minutes here, or maybe 30, 40 minutes there, or I'll listen to it if I'm like in the zone working on something. I can kind of listen to it in the background. So that is my take on approaching how to listen to the book. Now, I will also say is when you're going into this book, it's very good for you to have an open mind because I didn't know what to expect about this book when someone on my team recommended it. So I went in not knowing what to expect. And I'm glad that I did take that approach because it allowed me to really just give whatever Dr. Julie Smith was going to talk about in the book. Allowed me to give it an honest, I guess you say, hearing. I didn't come in with any preconceived notions or any expectations. I'm like, hey, I'm going to see what this book is about. And I think she did a very, very good job starting the book off where she talked about emotions and the way she talked about it. I hadn't really heard many people talk about emotions that way before because she talked about emotions as being signals. Now, as a leader of an accounting firm, we do bookkeeping, CFO work for law firms. And one of the really key words we talk about a lot are KPIs, or key performance indicators. They're not, I guess you say, they don't totally define your business, but they do tell you what kind of road your business is headed down. And so the way she explained it, I look at emotions that way now. Emotions are KPIs for your life. Emotions don't necessarily define who you are as a person, but they do kind of tell you what road you're headed down. Like, for example, often when I am working a lot and I am not sleeping as much and I start feeling tired, like that emotion of feeling tired is just telling me, like, hey, if you stay down this road, you're eventually not going to be very productive because you're going to be so tired that you won't be able to function. Now, looking at your emotions as KPIs becomes a very big game changer because I didn't notice that often I would look at my emotions not as KPIs. I looked at my emotions as a definition of who I am. So let me break that down this way. When I am feeling tired, what I have historically done is just said, hey, I am tired. And I didn't realize when you say it that way, what happens is you send a signal to your brain to say, hey, Terrell said, I am tired. That is who he is. we need to give him more ideas, or we need to give him more support to actually help, I guess you say, solidify that identity. If he is tired, let's give him more ideas to help him feel this more. Now, I know that probably sounds like a crazy idea, but it's kind of the way your subconscious brain works. Whatever identity you give to your subconscious mind is going to go find more things to help you keep going down that road. I mean, it's the craziest thing when you think about it, because at times when I would, be feeling tired, I would just come out and say, "Man, I'm tired." And it would not dawn on me is, well, if you're tired, stop, take a break, take a, get a nap or whatever would be the logical thing to do. Instead, my brain would just start thinking about, well, what else do I need to get done? I need to get this done. I need to get this done, or I need to get this done before I go to sleep. And I was like, you know what? When I really thought about it, I was like, man, what I have been saying to define how I feel has really been hurting me. And so I started really looking at it. What if I change it from saying I am tired to I feel tired? And when I started doing that, and I thought about, I've done this in the past before. And when I really look back at it and I said, okay, the times where I stopped saying I am tired or, I am sleepy, and I said, what, I feel tired or I feel sleepy, my brain would immediately click to, okay, here's how we need to move things around in your schedule to create more time so you can rest. Or, hey, maybe you got 15 minutes, Terrell, take a nap in these 15 minutes. You don't have a meeting during this gap. And what I would realize is by changing the way I talked about how I felt, my brain would then start helping me fix whatever the negative emotion that I was feeling. And I didn't realize, like, that was such a big deal until the way she talked about it in the book. Because the same thing happens in a business. Like, if I'm sitting down with a business owner and I'm looking and I'm saying, hey, here's what your KPIs are telling me. Now, based on these KPIs, we're going to make these changes to fix your business. For example, if a business is losing money, I don't look at that and say, hey, well, your business is losing money. You are a loser and you're going to keep losing money. What we usually do is we say, hey, the business is losing money right now. Here are the changes that we're going to make so that that doesn't become your future, so that you can go from losing money to actually making money. So if we look at our emotions as KPIs, that becomes a big game changer. Now, the other thing that really stood out to me is really looking at how diet and how fitness actually play a role in how you feel. First off, let's start with diet. Diet plays a very big role in how you feel. And I know that a lot of people hear that and some people get a little nervous and scared. I'll talk about myself personally. What I noticed is at times when I would be tired, I saw a very common trend is that in my diet, I started leaning towards more sugary foods or more sugary drinks. And what I realized is that a part of me thought that I was craving sugar, and the reality is I wasn't craving sugar. I was just actually craving energy. It's just in my mind I had associated the sugar in the food and the drinks with energy. And when I really took a step back and said, "Hey, Terrell, you probably just need to change your approach. Like, what if we had a better diet, like foods that weren't as high in sugar, but foods that still gave you energy?" And so what I started doing was changing some things in my diet. Instead of eating like simple sugars, like just going to cookies and I guess you say ice cream, or things with very high sugar content. Like I love I guess you say cream cheese icing. So I would buy these cookies that have cream cheese icing between. It's like a cookie sandwich that has cream cheese icing in the middle. What I noticed is I would actually have a craving for those, and it would be after working like 14-hour days consecutively for a while. But when I said, like, hey, what if I just stop working 14-hour days consecutively and I actually have a better approach and I actually add in a few more vegetables? What I notice is that constant feeling of being tired started to go away once I changed my diet and I changed my habit of how much I was sleeping. And also, my craving for the sugar went down as well. And so I think your diet plays a big role. And then also, the last thing I want to talk about was fitness. Fitness plays a huge role. And in the book, she definitely talks about how fitness plays a role. And when I thought about fitness, I didn't think about it just from physical fitness alone. I thought about financial fitness. So for me, when it comes down to financial fitness, it's not about just having a ton of money. It's, am I actively working towards a financial goal? Because if I'm actively challenging myself to work towards a financial goal, I tend to feel a lot more financially fit in those situations because I'm actively challenging myself to move towards a very clear goal. The times where I may have a lot of money in the bank, but if I don't really have a goal that I'm working towards, I don't really feel like we're financially fit. I always, at times, I would kind of feel like, man, we don't have enough there. And part of that I realize is because you're not actively challenging yourself to work towards a goal. And a lot of times, that's what fitness is about. Fitness is about being very clear. What standard am I trying to get to? And am I actively challenging myself to get there? Because even if you think about it from a physical fitness standpoint, a person who is in shape today but decides I'm no longer going to work out, well, guess what? You're not going to stay in a physically fit state if you stop challenging yourself to work towards a worthwhile goal. And I applied that same thing when it came down to relationships. What I realized is, like, even in my marriage, where get to the point where sometimes when you're living a busy life, you tend to just, hey, we'll make time for each other when it happens. But when I said, no, I am going to be very intentional about when we spend time together, when I started being more intentional about it and said, hey, here's the goal that I'm working towards. And I'm going to challenge myself to make time for my wife and I to spend time together, to be around each other. And when I started doing that, I realized my relationship with my wife started getting better. And how I felt emotionally definitely changed when I realized, like, financially, I was feeling fit. In my relationship, I was feeling fit. And also in things, physical is included as well. And what I will say about physical fitness, the biggest change for me was not working out constantly. The biggest change for me was making time to really just stretch. I mean, doing something very simple as stretching and making sure that I'm protecting my flexibility. There are times where I will spend time stretching, and immediately after I finish stretching, I feel a lot better. And it's like simple things like that can play a very big role in how your emotions impact the way you live your life. So, all in all, I think this was a really good book that really challenged me to think differently about emotions and how I am actually using my emotions to understand what decisions do I need to make in life. So, if you are looking for a book that is really going to be thought provoking and challenge you to approach the way you do things in life and the way you use your feelings and the way you understand your feelings and the role that they play in your life, I think this book, Why Hasn't Anybody Told Me This, is a really good book by Dr. Julie Smith. So we'll put it in the link so you can check it out if you're very interested in it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.